President Trump says that talks will begin immediately. Zelensky has showed up at the negotiating table. The question now, will Putin?
The things the president thinks is frankly stupid, that we should be able to move beyond the mistakes that have been made in the past, but that takes two to tango. I know the president's willing to do that, but if Russia's not willing to do that, then we're eventually just going to have to say, this is not our war. It's Joe Biden's war. It's Vladimir Putin's war. It's not our war. We're going to try to end it, but if we can't end it, we're eventually going to say, you know what, that was worth a try, but we're not doing it anymore.
All right, our panel's here, and we're also joined by CNN's Jeff Zeleny, who's live at the White House. Jeff, let me start with you on what we're learning in the wake of this phone call. How has President Trump been characterizing it, and how is that different from how the Russian president has been talking about it?
Well, Casey, as you said, President Trump is essentially giving this 2-hour phone call a glowing review. I mean, just reading this readout of the phone call, you would think that things are headed toward a ceasefire, but it also sounds like a different season. As we head into summer here now, as we head into the month of June, another month of fighting, this is exactly where the conversations were a few months ago, negotiating discussions about settlements, about going into a ceasefire discussion, rather than negotiating a ceasefire itself. So what I'm struck by, Casey, is all last week as the president traveled throughout the Middle East, as we traveled along with him, and on Friday, he said specifically, he said, we will have to meet, Vladimir Putin, President Trump, we will have to meet, he and I will meet, and we'll solve it. But today, in the statement, the president has said that, essentially said that Russia and Ukraine will have to negotiate this out themselves. So something has changed a bit here, but the president, the U.S. president, clearly is not pressuring Putin at all. There was no sign of leverage. And the bottom line, there was also no response, as far as we can tell, about Vladimir Putin wanting to meet. Donald Trump ended last week wanting to meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. There was no such a discussion of that. So the bottom line is, it seems like we are a long way from even a ceasefire, let alone a sustained peace here. But look, any conversation obviously is a good conversation to have. Both parties are talking. But at the end of the day here, I'm not sure what was gained by this. There certainly were no significant breakthroughs, if any breakthroughs at all.
All right, Jeff Zeleny reporting for us. Fascinating stuff there, Jeff. Thank you very much. All right, our panel joins us now. CNN anchor, Chief National Security Analyst Jim Sciutto, CNN contributor, New York Times journalist, and podcast host Lulu Garcia-Navarro, former communications director for the DNC, Mo Elleithee, and CNN political commentator and Republican strategist Brad Todd. Welcome to all of you. Thank you all for being here. Jim Sciutto, let me start with you. I was reading a little bit into how J.D. Vance was framing that there. I mean, on the one hand, the much sunnier meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, right? Of course, it was Vance who, if anyone, really torqued that Oval Office meeting and made it worse. But on the other hand, what he said there on the plane really leave the door open to them saying, this is not our war, and potentially ceasing to offer U.S. support. What did you hear in it?
So, I heard quite the same thing, and it's interesting because I spoke to a senior European diplomat, and I said, what are your takeaways from this call? And the first one was, it looks like the U.S. is stepping back from the talks, making it clear this is between Russia and Ukraine, and it's really not our game. The second piece is that this diplomat was disappointed that President Trump did not bring up U.S. sanctions on Russia, because the obvious point here is that Russia still has not agreed to a ceasefire that Ukraine agreed to weeks ago and that the president demanded weeks ago. And hanging over this had always been the threat that the U.S. would apply a stick of sanctions. But even with another call where you didn't get that deliverable, still no threat of sanctions. And really the message seems to be, I'm going to let them duke it out, right? That kind of thing, which is, from the European perspective, it's a disappointment, right? Because they do want to push these forward, and the administration position seems to be stepping back.
I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could just say, I'm not going to do anything about this, and it would all go away? But that's not what's happened. We see that in Gaza. I mean, the war there is expanding. There was a promise that there was going to be a ceasefire under Donald Trump. He said it was really important to end that war, and now that war is again expanding. And we're seeing something similar with Ukraine. If the United States just says, you know what, I'm going to let this go whatever way it's going to go, it doesn't mean the war goes away. It doesn't mean that the threats go away. It doesn't mean that Russia's aggression goes away. It simply means that the United States is just stepping back and washing its hands of it.
Brad, Todd, I mean, we've seen the MAGA wing of the Republican Party push for this conflict to be ended, for U.S. support, in many cases, for the Ukraine war to stop. But of course, the premise, the reason why we've spent so much money on it already, is that this is a representation of defense of the West, of the Western way of living. How do you look at what President Trump is doing here, and how much of it relates to electoral politics here?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a message Trump inherited, the one he didn't want. It really goes back all the way to when Russia took Crimea and Obama let him take it. We've sort of all been trying to get out of that mess since then. I think the Trump strategy so far has been to try to let Russia save face and let Ukraine save sovereignty. And that's been a tough needle to thread. And all the while, our European allies are doing nothing to get themselves off the dependence on Russian oil and gas long term. It's almost as if Europe's cheering for success and not willing to pay for it. So I think that perhaps over time, if the U.S. does step back some now, there can be a resetting of that U.S.-European axis so that the Europeans get fully on board with cutting Russia off long term, not just this month.
Mo, how do you look at this? And again, I mean, Brad references Obama. Republicans will blame Obama for a lot of this. And you heard J.D. Vance say this is Joe Biden's war.
Yeah, I mean, look, and to pick up something that Lulu said, Donald Trump ran on a promise to stop wars. The two biggest conflicts in the world haven't stopped. They haven't been contained. They have both expanded under Donald Trump's watch. And I look at this approach to Russia, Ukraine, and I can't help but wonder if Putin isn't just sitting back saying, I can hold out because this guy is giving me everything I want. Think about this. Russia's economy is in tatters, in large part because of this war. We actually have leverage. We actually can put just a little bit of economic sanction pressure on them, and that would hurt. But that didn't come up. The president and the vice president are saying, we can just, if you guys don't work this out, we'll just sit back. That might make the MAGA wing happy, but Putin's sort of in the driver's seat here.
He is offering a carrot today, though, of trade and the potential to help Russia's economy through proactive trade. If you combine that offer to trade with America with Europe swearing to get off Russian oil and gas and importing American LNG gas, for instance, or restarting their nuclear programs, maybe that's the trick long term. But we've got all
maybe.
The thing about that is that the trade offer. By the way, no one begrudges the president's attempt to end bloody wars that have victimized and of course it's the people who suffer these wars the most, right, the civilians, etc. But the idea that Putin, who envisions rebuilding his near abroad in Europe, who, by the way, denies Ukraine's existence as a sovereign state, is going to be moved off what he views as a strategic objective, right? Regaining that foothold and, frankly, weakening the United States. He calculates that's in his interest. That he's going to be moved off that by a, hey, we're going to sell more stuff to each other. It just misses his view of this conflict. Putin's much like if you look at Israel, right? Israel looks at the war in Gaza as in its strategic interest. Granted, there are Israelis who don't believe that the progress of the war right there is in its interest. So the idea of redeveloping Gaza as a beach resort, again, those trade deals don't move nations off their calculations of their own strategic interests.
Well, and Jim, let me put up the different ways in which these two leaders talked about this call briefly, and I'll let you finish out our conversation here. I think the last one under Putin, eliminate the root causes of this crisis. Yeah. Right? I mean, that
I had it highlighted too.
Paper,
yeah,
right?
The trouble is Russia looks at the root causes of the crisis as Ukraine wanting to move away. Well, Ukraine being a country, right?
Right, exactly. That's my point.
Ukraine wanting to be closer to Europe as opposed to closer to Russia, which is a 20-year-old battle there. I mean, this is why Russia's been interfering in Ukraine's elections going back. It's why they poisoned their leaders, etc. So if he still thinks the root causes have been addressed, remember what his view of the root causes.
What is the strategy here from the Trump administration? I mean, this is really what it comes down to. What actually is it trying to achieve? What does it want? What is it offering? I mean, this is not getting two kids that are fighting to sit together in the sandbox. This is actually very important geostrategic stuff, and I still don't understand what it is that they are trying to achieve.
Yeah, well, I mean, I go back to what Jeff said at the top of the show, which I think is very interesting, that they went from Trump and Putin can get on the phone and fix it, to them essentially saying, well, Trump and Putin got on the phone. This is Putin and Zelensky's problem now. Jim Sciutto.
A lot of American presidents have looked
Very
into
much.
Putin's eyes and seen
Oh,
his
I've heard
soul,
that
right?
before,
It goes all the way
right.
back to George Bush, right?
Right, and somehow Putin is still,
Reset buttons too. Remember that, right?
yes, reset buttons. And here we are still
Yeah.
talking about it. Jim, thank you. Very grateful for
Thank
your
you.
expertise on the show today.